Thank you, Keith. Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Lee. I'm an alcoholic. And thank you so much for inviting me to share the weekend with you. It's a real privilege for me, and I'm always surprised, as I think others have said, when we get the call. And as my sponsor says, I'm only here for one reason. I don't suffer from the delusion that you need to hear what I have to say. But clearly I have an overwhelming need to say it, or I wouldn't have come this far, and my home group's almost cut me off. So, But what I do know is that you guys, you've invited me to your party, to your annual event, and I go to a lot of these during the course of the year, and it's never lost on me that where I'm at for the folks that are there, that this is really an annual thing, and it's got so much history. I think this is the 42nd, if I remember correctly, and as Keith said, I actually spoke here at this convention 16 years ago, and apparently, everyone connected with the conference then has either died or moved away, and statute of limitations has been lifted, and I'm back, and I'm grateful for it. I've got some good friends in this area. Many of you know Mary Jane R., who was so active, and I'm sure a big part of this convention, and she's who invited me 16 years ago, and we're privileged to have Mary Jane living with us in Nashville now, so it's been great to have her. Your loss is our gain. Jack G., who passed away 5 years ago, had become a dear friend of mine over the years, and so I've had warm memories and been able to share some of those with some of my friends this weekend, and it's been great to be here, so thank you. I'm going to try to do what you invited me to do tonight, which is kind of twofold. Our book suggests that I share with you a little bit about what I was like and what happened to bump me into Alcoholics Anonymous, and what it's been like since I've been here, and what it's like now. And I used to think that's what I did. But the truth is that's not really quite what happens, because I think what I do is share with you what I think I was like and what I think happened. And I share with you what it felt like to be me, what life looked like through the prism of my alcoholism. And what I know is the way I saw things isn't necessarily the way that they were. I know that how I experienced life isn't necessarily how other people were experiencing it. I know that in many cases, I got family members I've talked to that we shared what seemed a huge moment in our lives, and we talk about it years later, and we have very different recollections of that event. And we had a different experience while it was going on. And it's like if we all looked at a piece of art or listened to a piece of music, the piece of art is what it is, and the music is what it is, but we will have an individual experience with it. And I will share with you what it felt like to be me, what the world looked like through my eyes, filtered through this alcoholism, through this prism of fear and insecurity and self-centeredness. And I'm not talking about when it was alcohol fueled. When I was drinking, I did drunk stuff. It's easy to explain anything I did while drinking. I was drunk. And when I get drunk, I do drunk stuff. And if you take a non-alcoholic and me and put us side by side and pour a fifth of whiskey in us, we're both going to be drunk, and we're both going to do drunk stuff. But it's the way I felt sober that I had no idea before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous that I was alcoholic even when I wasn't drinking. I had no idea of that. I didn't know anything about alcoholism before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't understand the problem I had, so certainly I didn't know what to do about it. I knew that I had alcohol-related problems. I could connect the dots to getting in trouble, to 6 DUIs, to totaling 6 automobiles, to being drunk at the hospital and making a scene when my daughter was born. I can recount untold drunken escapades. But what I couldn't understand was why at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, with a good job, with a wife that loved me, with a kid that loved me, with a middle-class life that looked pretty good from the outside looking in, with a house and a couple of cars that were current on their payments at the time, why did I feel the way that I felt? And I could not have even explained to you how I felt. I couldn't articulate those feelings. Alcoholics Anonymous, I get to Alcoholics Anonymous, and you gave voice to my alcoholism. You gave language to things that I had not been able to get my arms around. I didn't talk about how I felt, and I don't mean I didn't do it because I'm not a touchy-feely guy. I didn't do it because I wouldn't have known what to say. I didn't understand the feelings, except I was pretty sure I was the only one that had these feelings. And I'll talk about that more as I go on. One of the ways that I know that people sometimes have different experiences or that I don't always see things as they are. My wife and I, she was with me, I'll talk more about Connie later. We were at a conference together a few years ago, and I talked, and of course I went on and on about what I'm like now. And we got up to the room later that evening, and she said, Steve, you know that last 15 minutes of your talk? Yeah, baby. She said, I would love to meet that guy. And yeah. I wish you would bring him home sometime. And so I know, literally and figuratively, how I see me is not always how other people see me. And how I see you is never the whole picture. So we never, that it says in we agnostics that no one can fully describe or comprehend that power, which is God. And I would say that likewise, no one can fully describe or comprehend another person. Yet, I make lifelong judgments about you often within the first 5 minutes of being together. Many of my relationships in life are defined by our worst moment together, by my perceived indiscretion or transgression towards me, a slight that perhaps wasn't even real. But I've got the capacity for you to get something in your eye, and for me to build a backstory behind that will have me hating you for years with never a spoken word, at least to your face. I realize after being at Alcoholics Anonymous for a while that I have most of my life looked and made these judgments of the world as I perceived it, yet I see in our book that one of my favorite description of insanity in our book, it's right after Jim poured the whiskey in his milk. And that's not even what's crazy. I mean, it's not a very sophisticated drink, but it's not pouring the whiskey in his milk. It's that just a paragraph before. It says he knew that this would be one more trip to the asylum. He knew that it would be the loss of his job. He knew that it would be the loss of his family. So the book says, what can this lack of proportion or the ability to think straight be called but insanity? And I stand here telling you that before I got to AA, and sometimes today, I have a lack of proportion. I respond disproportionately to the events I'm responding to. I see things out of proportion. I don't see things in their right size or in their right shape or with the right clarity. And I think that that's what Chuck C. was talking about with a new pair of glasses. I think that that's what this spiritual awakening that's been talked about this weekend does. To be spiritually awakened, as Stacy talked about last night, allows me to begin to see things as they really are. So I begin to respond to life based on a reality that eluded me before. But I don't know that until I get here. You can already tell that while I said I'm going to try to do what you invited me to do, I am not compelled to do it in any particular order. I'd say my story is kind of like a Quentin Tarantino movie. There's just no time and space continuum, and I will tell a host of seemingly unrelated stories and hope they weave together by the end of the hour. But I have reached a point where frankly, I'm willing, if something shows up, I'll kind of take a right turn and follow it, And so I don't know where this talk might go. Sometimes that is divinely inspired. And sometimes it's just self-indulgent. And I don't know which is which until I'm done. And even then, I need somebody else to corroborate my belief. But I'm freer today to do that, to share with you not only as honestly as I can, but sometimes as fluidly as I can with regard to what's showing up. Because I hope, and I was talking with Georgia earlier and talking with Bill doing the recording. I hope to kind of get out of the way a little bit. I think Stacy mentioned it last night. I'll say I called my wife after a talk in Williamsburg, Virginia. I've got some friends at that conference tonight, but it was 5 or 6 years ago, and I'd spoken at that conference, and I called my wife Sunday morning, and I said, I gave a terrible talk last night. I was just all over the place. And she said, well, I hope you weren't talking at all. She said, I hope God was speaking through you. And I said, well, in the hospitality suite, they're blaming me for God's talk. And yeah, that could happen here. And what our book suggests I do, in addition to those three things previously mentioned, it says that in our personal stories, each of us in our own language and from our own point of view talks about how he established a relationship with God. So I hope to do that. And there's language there is very important to me. I get to do it using my language to articulate in the way, and from my point of view. And a point of view is simply what it looks like from here. I was standing in my room tonight. I went back up, and it wasn't quite dark yet, and I've got a beautiful view out over the bay. But it dawns on me that there are other people in this hotel located in a different place in the hotel who have a different view. So we're both looking out, and if we come in here and describe what we see out our window, we can both be right and be describing two very different things. And so what you will hear tonight is what it looks like from here. And it doesn't challenge anybody else's belief system, and I don't mean it to negate anyone else's belief system. I simply share what it looks like, and I will tell you my view regularly changes. So I'm prepared to continue for this view to evolve. My sobriety date is June the 30th, 1989. I got so nervous when Jack was doing the countdown. I was trying to figure out, because I'm 28 years sober, but am I 28 or am I 29? Not quite 28. Am I 28? It took me all the way up to 28 to do the math. And I went to my sponsor when I was 6 months sober, and I said, Frank, man, I am confused about this sobriety date thing. I said, is it the last day I had a drink or the first day I didn't have a drink? And he said, oh, Steve, he said, man, I'm just impressed with the quality of questions that are keeping you up. And he said, I don't care, pick one. He said, because I am much more concerned with you not taking the next drink than when you had the last one. And I stand here tonight more concerned about avoiding the next one than taking some pride in what I saw tonight in 58 years and 59 years and all the periods in between is not people I suspect that are proud of their sobriety dates, but people that are grateful for them. And it's important. I don't think you people, those with 59 and 58 and 40 and 30 something, we're not here. We would not be here if pride was the driving force. And I'm not here tonight out of fear of taking a drink. If you're new, I understand. I'm not immune from a drink. I did not for a moment believe that I'm incapable of taking a drink. But I'm not here tonight out of fear that my life that I used to have will show back up. I'm here tonight because I am so enthralled and grateful to the life I have today and drawn to where my life is headed. My books, I always read the book in the present tense. It's always current because it's a spiritual document. And when it says the most satisfying years of my existence lie ahead, I believe that has been true and that remains true going forward if I continue to stay engaged in my recovery. So my last drink was June 30th, or my sobriety date's June 30th. My last drink was June 29th, 1989. That's the last time I've had a drink or a drug. And I tell you now, the most embarrassing thing I ever share from the podium, because I've been here, I've talked to some of you, I've heard the stories that Stacy shared last night and that Georgia shared today. My God, they're bad alcoholics. And and my last drink was an amaretto on the rocks. Yeah, I'm appropriately ashamed of that. And but at least you now know I didn't know that was going to be my last drink, right? I would not have gone down that way. They had a little meeting and said, Steve, we got together and you can have one more drink. What will it be? Amaretto would not have made my top 10, but I was scheduled into a treatment facility on July the 1st of 1989. And not because I had decided I needed or wanted to stop drinking, and not because I'd had some epiphany and was seeking some moral conversion in my life. I simply was going to fulfill my obligation to the legal system of Williamson County, Tennessee, for the conviction of my 6th DUI a year before. And as part of a plea bargain agreement, they'd given me some jail time, and they cut some of that jail time off if I would go to residential drug and alcohol rehabilitation. And I really didn't know much about what that was going to be or look like. I knew that somebody was going to suggest I not drink. I had that much foresight, and I'd seen a couple of bad TV movies of the week that had AA in it, and some afternoon special or something. But I'm going to go there on July just to fulfill my obligation to the legal system. And so my wife and I went out with 3 other couples before I was going to go away, and wasn't a particular wild or raucous evening. Came in after dinner, I smoked a joint, drank a glass of amaretto, and went to bed. It was just another Friday night at the Lee household. And the next day we took our daughter Abby, who was then 5 years old, to Chuck E. Cheese before Daddy was going away on a 28-day business trip. And hard worker that he is. And you can already tell I'm not a tough guy, and I'm just the poster boy for middle-class alcoholism. And I will say that while I am not a tough guy or a street-smart guy, I would encourage any of you, do not spend your first day sober at Chuck E. Cheese. It's a hellish day at Chuck E. Cheese. They're short and coming at you from every angle, and it is loud in there. And just as I'm gathering my emotional balance, I saw a 6-foot mouse, I said to Connie, "But baby, do you see the mouse?" And then on Saturday morning, my friend Ricky came by to pick me up to take me off to this treatment center. And he pulled up, and Connie walked out with me to go, and I got the kind of support from Connie that a lot of my AA brothers and sisters don't get from their loved ones. Her last words to me as I was getting in that car was, "No matter what, baby, don't stop drinking." Now, I'll tell you, Connie's sobriety date is 10 days after mine. Now, Connie and I met in a bar over a pile of cocaine that was hers, and she had just moved back from Lake Tahoe to Nashville, where she'd been dealing baccarat. She'd gotten married, she got divorced. She showed up in Nashville with a pickup truck, a pocket full of divorce money, and 8 ball of cocaine, and I was smitten. And a few months later, we went on a trip to Mexico. We drank something out of a coconut. We got on a boat where they took us out to what they said were international waters, where an Austrian merchant marine read what he said was a wedding ceremony in Spanish. And, we don't speak Spanish, so I'm not sure what we agreed to. But based on tonight's countdown, that was over 35 and less than 36 years ago. My buddy Ricky takes me over to that treatment center, and I had a host of feelings. I was angry because I didn't feel like that this was fair. We had this wonderful capacity to feel put upon, to not take ownership or responsibility for the things that had gone on in my life. I love it. I think Stacy talked about that last night. I sat not long ago in a beginner's meeting, and I sat down next to a guy, and I could tell he was not happy to be there. And And I just introduced, I said, how you doing, man? I said, I'm Steve, good to see you. How you doing? He just grunted. And I said, what brings you here? He, you know, you know. And he said, and you got to love it, right? He said, I got a DUI for having a broken tail light. Yeah. I get that, man. So my home group, we call that alkalogic. And so Ricky's taking me over this place. I'm angry. I'm afraid, but fear on me looks like anger. I'm anxious. I'm confused. I don't know what to expect. I'm uncertain. Everything about this felt uncomfortable. And I couldn't believe that I was going to have to go be with those kind of people, whoever they were going to. I mean, I'm the guy that in the drunk tank that I've been in a bunch thinks I'm a visitor to this strange land and everyone else belongs here. And we're headed over here, and I'm worried about mingling with those type of people. You know, people like you. And I get there, and they gave me a test immediately. And this is how I begin to share with you a little bit about my relationship with alcohol. They call it an assessment. Now, these have changed a little bit over the years. Today, they're much more clinical in nature. They are designed to help determine medical necessity and a therapeutic approach, and to help, understandably, to get reimbursement from insurance providers. But the test I took that day was more like Jeff Foxworthy's "you might be a redneck if" type questions. And while there were a lot of questions, one section of this assessment was 30 questions that all began with the phrase, "have you ever?" Which, right, that's overly strident right out of the gate. They explained, by the way, that "have you ever" means even once, even with a really good reason. Have you ever drank in the morning? Have you ever drank alone? Have you ever had a DUI? Have you ever had a blackout? Have you ever had trouble at home because of drinking? Have you ever had trouble at work because of drinking? 30 have you ever questions, and you know they just have check yes or check no to what are clearly essay questions. These are questions that beg for an explanation. You know, we laugh here tonight, and I think Stacy talked about it last night as well, because, and our book says that cheerfulness and laughter make for usefulness. But I laugh through the prism of today, looking back. And as she made the point, and I want to reiterate tonight, is that this wasn't funny the day I was doing it. The day I was doing it, I'm literally looking at these questions. And I can't make myself check a box, because people are going to draw conclusions about me when I check this box. And how can you do that without the backstory? How can you do it without me explaining myself? And I got questions about the questions. I mean, have you ever drank in the morning? I'm going, well, what do you mean morning? And part of my problem, honestly, is because I think I know what they're asking. Again, I'm making assumptions based on bad information. Because I think they're asking me if I'm that guy that's got to reach over at 4 in the morning and grab that half pint and take a couple of pulls off of it just to be able to fight the shakes off and maybe get to the bathroom and back, and then take a couple more pulls just to maybe get back to sleep or get on up and get his day started. And I've done that a few times, but not so often I'm going to check it on this test. But what if I'm out somewhere at 2 or 3 a.m. at last call at a very nice establishment? Is that morning drinking? And if I don't explain the difference, you're going to think I'm like that guy. I mean, you'll hear Kent in the morning. You'll think I'm like Kent. Have you ever drank alone? Yeah, but they left. I mean, really, you ever just look around and go, whoa, it was a party just a little while ago. And again, I think I know what they're asking. And I promise you this stuff is going through my head. Like they're asking me if I'm that guy that's got to go home, close the door, pull the blinds. Used to be unplug the phone. Now it's, just put it on silent or turn it off. And drink in isolation, hide from the world. And I've certainly done that some. But again, I'm not going to check it on this test. But there's another kind of alone drinking that I had to do. And I'm a guy that had to drink to go drinking. So if I'm drinking at home, but I'm getting ready to go to the club or go to the house or go over here, is that alone drinking? In fact, what if I'm drinking in the car on the way over there, but there are other people on the highway? I mean, where are we drawing the line? Now, let me tell you what I know, what I'm grateful for. Obviously I didn't do well on the test, But the way I answer those questions isn't what makes me alcoholic. And there were 30 questions, and if we all took it, many of us would answer different ones of those differently. Those are types of questions that might expose alcoholism. It might shine a light on it. It might be a red flag to alcoholism. But I'm not alcoholic because of how I answered those questions. I answered those questions the way I did because I'm alcoholic. And I get to Alcoholics Anonymous, and you simplify it for me a little bit when I'm trying to not be alcoholic. And I was trying in that treatment center and in the AA meetings we went out to, I'm trying hard not to be alcoholic. And the way I was going to figure that out was by listening very closely. There's two ways we come, those of us who are mandated to AA, usually do one of two things. Many of us sit in the back, do our time, don't pay attention, just kind of were there just to do it. I decided to pay really close attention so I could understand what you were saying about alcoholism, so I could confirm for me and for others that that's not true of me. And that can be a trap. Because ultimately, I began, as I said, that Alcoholics Anonymous gave voice to my alcoholism. You began to describe, as you shared, which is what we do in AA. The very linchpin of Alcoholics Anonymous is one alcoholic sharing with another, offering the opportunity for identification, one alcoholic with another. And you guys began to talk. And you would say something, or I would read something in that book, and I would go, that's it. That thing I could not articulate before, you were putting into words. You had a language. You helped me see that if when I honestly want to, I can't stop entirely, or if when drinking I have little control of the amount I take, I'm probably alcoholic. I mean, you gave me that probably. You gave me a little bit of wiggle room. And I needed it. And you gave me time to figure out for myself. Nobody tried to convince me I was alcoholic. Nobody was on a membership drive when I showed up. You shared of yourselves and gave me that opportunity to, kids, see if this is true of you. If it is, we'll tell you, what's our book say? One of my favorite little passages, if you're an alcoholic that wants to get over it, you may already be asking, what do I have to do? It says that's exactly what this book is about. And then comes the critical piece. We will tell you what we have done. That's what people have been telling me what to do all my life. Back in the chapter to the employer, there's a wonderful phrase that goes, when dealing with an alcoholic, there may be a natural annoyance that someone could be so weak, stupid, and irresponsible. And see, that's what alcoholism looks like to the untrained eye. It looks weak, stupid, and irresponsible. I felt weak, stupid, and irresponsible. And to those close to me, I looked weak, stupid, and irresponsible. And people weren't calling me an alcoholic. People in my circle weren't even telling me to stop drinking. They wanted me to not drink so much, don't drink so often, don't drink it there, don't drink it with them. For God's sake, don't drink it tonight. Just drink like we do. Control and enjoy your drinking, our book would call it. And I don't know why I can't do that. I don't understand it. I was never giving me this language, right? Lack of power. Phenomenon of craving. I've got an allergy to alcohol. Man, that was a huge piece of news to me when I was sitting in an AA meeting and somebody began to talk about an allergy. I went, no kidding. That's huge. in the doctor's opinion, it says it explains that for which we could not otherwise account. Oh, that's why. When I meant to do better, when I hoped to do better, when with firm resolve and good intention, I really was going to be home at 7. I really was going to do whatever I said I was going to do, or not do what I swore I'd never do again. And this explains why when I took that, but I was never out at the bar, and after about my second or third drink, nudged the guy next to me and said, I don't know about you, pal, but that phenomenon of craving's kicking in on me. Whoa, lack of power is my dilemma. I just thought I changed my mind. I'm just in there, I'm going to go home, I'm going to stop, and then I go, ah, to hell with it. Who's she to tell me to be home at 7? I've been working all day. Well, I've been at work all day. I didn't get caught not working today. But I didn't know any of this stuff. And I certainly didn't understand how I felt. And alcohol served such an important role for me in so many ways, but not ways that I knew. It wasn't strategic drinking. You know what I mean? I wasn't taking a drink necessarily to overcome this hyper self-consciousness. I didn't think about it in that way, but I knew that when I drank, I was more comfortable with you. See, I know what it's like. Our book calls alcohol in one form a social lubricant. Man, I used it like that. And, you know, I almost get the picture. It's like me oiling up. And then I move easily amongst you. And without it, I feel like the ball in the pinball machine, just bumping into everything. And I don't think I looked like that, though. See, what I would tell you is that I don't think anybody in my life would have described me as uncomfortable, insecure, self-conscious, afraid, lonely. I don't think anybody would have described me that way because I worked so hard not to get caught feeling that way. Not letting you see how I felt. And it's exhausting. I know what it's like to steel myself up in front of a door to get ready to walk into a family situation or a work situation or a social situation. And try to pretend, to act like I feel good, to act like, to be outgoing and gregarious and personable. And I was that. I mean, that's what I showed. That's what people expected of me in my mind. I got a responsibility. I'm the dancing bear. I'm a guy that entertains. I'm a guy that carries the conversation. I'm the funny guy. Man, that's hard. It's hard for me anyway. But a few drinks made that a little easier. Unfortunately, I don't have a few drinks, right? What's our book say? It says, I'm restless, irritable, and discontent, and I will long. I will long. They should have more O's in there. I will long for the sense of ease and comfort. That accompanies a few drinks. A few drinks might give me that, but I don't know how to stop at a few drinks. Not only do I not know how, I'm incapable. That's what I learned. Before I said, why can't I? Now I know I'm incapable of predicting when that's going to happen. So I'm going to tell a couple of drinking stories. And, I was 18 before I had my first drink. My goodness, Stacy had been, drinking a long time before me. George had been drinking. These girls, these are rough and tumble girls on the front row. I got to tell you. Yeah. I was 18 and I wasn't going to be a drinker in high school. I played sports and I was I was a good kid. I went where I said I was going to go. I was with who I said I was going to be with, and I came home when I said I was going to come home. I didn't want to be a good kid. I was a bad boy trapped in a good boy's body. But I was not a rule breaker. My mother said she'd put me down on a quilt when I was my brother. She said she had to get a playpen, my older brother, a playpen, and put a piece of plywood over the top of it so he wouldn't crawl out and go. And she said she just put me on a blanket and I'd crawl out to the edges but not go off the blanket. But man, I wanted to. I was looking off the blanket. I saw the people that weren't on the blanket, And then these two guys came by one night and, we headed off to a basketball game and they handed back a bottle of Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill wine. Yeah, boy, I hear the moans and groans when you bring out the Boone's Farm. Yeah, I know so far this is a gory story for you. You know, AA is the damnedest place I've ever been, to be honest with you. I sat with you guys, you'll brag about holding up convenience stores, and I got 3 wives in 4 states, and but I didn't drink to Boone's Farm, and no. Where you'll plant your flag never ceases to amaze me, but no. Anyway, you know, I blacked out that night. You know, I had a great time. I don't remember much about it. It did nothing, you know, I don't know that anything wild happened. I came to the next day, and I'm a blackout drinker. It doesn't require much for me to black out, as it turns out. I just regularly lost time. I love what the comedian Dave Attell said. He said he's a blackout drinker, as he likes to call it, time travel. And that's what it felt like. You know, I go, oh, you know, how did I get here in the future, and what has been going on? And if you're like me, and some of you are, you don't ask questions to get those answers. You just kind of read people's faces the next day. You know, you try to get a feel for, oh, you know, was I just kind of cute, or did this go way off in the weeds, you know? And then you got that one buddy, you know, man, tell me, oh, Steve, you don't even want to know, brother. I've lost cars a bunch. I couldn't, you know. I once woke up, and when I was going to college, I came to in the bleachers of the baseball field of the college baseball stadium. It's a pretty big stadium, and I have no idea why. I just came to, and I was down between the bleachers, you know, where you put your feet, not on the bleachers themselves, and it was cool and damp, and I woke up, I have no idea, you know, how I got there, what happened. And I knew this was kind of weird, you know, but by that night, I'm kind of making a joke of it and kidding with my college buddies about it. And a week or two later, I came to in the same spot. It was as if I'd bought a season ticket, and I was right there. And I never told anybody that. See, that was one of the first places where I thought this thing has moved to a place where now stuff is happening, and I know this, you know, that's different than just, oh, let me tell you how drunk I got last night kind of story. Now this is getting weird, you know, so now I'm beginning to manage the information I share with people about my drinking and what was going on in my life. I'm beginning to keep little stuff off to the side and keep my own secrets. In 1980, I was living in Atlanta, Georgia. On a weekday afternoon, I was at in a bar drinking kamikaze shooters and taking Tuanols. And there's a lot to unpack in that sentence, because clearly I wasn't at work, and I was in a bar. And anyway, I came out of there, and this was in Atlanta, and I was on I got disoriented. I got on the interstate going east in the westbound lane. I hit a car head on. 2 other cars hit us. It totaled all 4 cars. It sent people to the hospital and sent me to jail. I came to in the Cobb County Jail. I'd urinated on myself and I'd vomited on myself, or I hope I did, because somebody did. And and I will tell you that I was as afraid as I had ever been of the consequences, legal, personal, and professional, that awaited me. I didn't yet know the extent of the injuries of people. It turns out no one was critically injured, but some people were hurt, and I was sued over that, and I should have been. And I was as ashamed as I had ever been at the harm I had caused. And I was as humiliated as I had ever been at the state I found myself in, my own urine and my own vomit. And I was as certain as I had ever been that I'm through. I'll never drink again. I've now crossed a line that even I can't live with. I'm done. And 10 days later, I'm driving down the road smoking a joint, drinking a bottle of wine, thinking, I nearly overreacted to that. And then I get to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I see in their book when it says that there'll come a time that a guy like me, that the alcoholic won't be able to bring to consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. I'll be without defense against the drink. And I go, that explains it. That's what happened. I'm not just weak, stupid, and irresponsible. It's not that I don't care. It's not that I'm weak-willed. I mean, I can be all of those things, but that's not the only thing going on. I've got a strange mental blank spot where it concerns alcohol. Common sense and logic is no defense for alcoholism. People asking that question that is unanswerable. Why? Why would you do that again? Why? I got no answer for that. I got no answer till I get to Alcoholics Anonymous. Anyway, I was loving, I could tell more drunk stories, but they begin to sound alike. And it's not unimportant. We do share our drunkalogs to provide that identification. And the other point I want to make is, as you guys will have noticed, being here all weekend, you had Stacy speak last night, you had Georgia this afternoon, you'll have Kent in the morning, and you've got me. You have quite different experiences. You've got different backgrounds. You've got different lifestyles. You've got a host of things that are different about us. So alcoholism looks different on different people. And we will explain our escapades will look and sound different. So when we tell people you're not unique, we're not saying you aren't unique. We're really saying your alcoholism isn't unique. That despite all of the differences that might be, there might be differences of age, race, creed, color, you pick it. The good news is that we are drawn here tonight by a common problem. And I'm here 28 years, well, more than 28, less than 29 years later, by the common solution. See, we show up at AA at the level of the problem. We show up usually the day before we get to AA was usually not a good day. Something's gone wrong. We only get to AA for two reasons. Either I've decided I got a problem with my drinking, or somebody else has decided there's a problem with my drinking. And I was in that latter category. Neither one's more noble. And you guys let me hang out in AA to figure out if I was alcoholic. There's no better place to figure out if I'm alcoholic than in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's why it's so critical for all of us. These guys have shared, and Kent will share his story, and I'm sharing mine. But ultimately, that's what we bring to Alcoholics Anonymous. We all bring our story. We all bring the truth about ourselves. And we share that, and sometimes it's from the podium, but more often and usually more effectively, it's over a cup of coffee or it's one-on-one. It's one alcoholic talking with another. And I'll tell you my deal. This is what it was like for me, and this is what I'm doing about it. Man, if you're interested, I'd love to help. Because all I have to share is what is my experience with these steps, my experience with this program of recovery. And somebody else's might, as I said, might sound and look a little different. I'll tell you what I did, that's all I got. But it's no small thing. That's why it's critical for all of us to share our stories. And I'm out in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I decided somewhere in about my third week of that treatment that not that I wanted to stop drinking, but that I knew I needed to stop drinking. And I became willing to stop. I'm going to try to not drink. And AA is how I'm going to try to not drink. And I don't yet really know what AA is asking of me. I've been at a few meetings, and I was attracted to you guys right away. I really was attracted to AA, to the men and women in AA, to the fellowship, to an unspoken thing I couldn't articulate. I didn't really know yet. I mean, I'd seen these steps on the wall, but clearly you're not as serious about that. You know, I mean, it's a good guideline, but you're not going to be fanatical about that. I'd gone my whole life at about a C student, and I thought, just all kind of half-ass this AA thing, regardless of what that half measures thing says. I know where I come from, half gets you half, and I'm usually good with half, But I don't know what it's going to look like. But I decided I'm going to get in AA. I'm going to do AA. And if you're new, you may have some of the feelings that I had. Once I decided I needed to stop drinking, and I was absolutely committed to the idea of not drinking, but I thought that we were going to spend an awful lot of time in AA not drinking. I thought not drinking was an actual activity in AA, that we will get together and not drink. Yeah. Would you look at him not drink over there? And you see the technique on that guy, man? He reached forward, he pulled back, unbelievable. And I thought, hey, guys would call, say, Steve, man, we're going to go to the, to the Titans game on Sunday. You want to go? Boys, I'd love to go, but I'm busy Sunday. I will be home not drinking on Sunday. And we're going on a golf weekend, man. You want to go? No, I'd love to go, but I'll be home all weekend just not drinking. In fact, somebody said don't drink even if your ass falls off. I'll be home not drinking, guarding my ass. And I'll just be not drinking, man. And it was going to be a small, pitiful life. It was going to be all about where I can't go and what I can't do and who I can't hang out with. And I thought my life was about to get small, and the truth is I had no idea how small my life had become. I had no idea the number of places I could not or would not go, how limited I was in my sphere, how limited my friendships had become, how often I was not free to go places that I desperately wanted to go, but I'm afraid, I'm uncomfortable. I'll just end up home, because I ended up just home drinking a lot. I ended up spending a lot of weekends being that guy that just pulled the shades with my wife. Sometimes we'd get up and say, hey, you know what, on a Saturday morning, say, let's call the weekend. What do you say? And we'd unplug the phone, and we would pull the shades, and we wouldn't answer. We wouldn't answer the door if somebody came. We'd just get loaded all weekend. We would drink all weekend long. And we'd put that daughter of ours, we'd put her to bed as early as we could get her to go to bed, so we didn't have to fool with her. Now, we loved her. What I'm going to tell you is that I loved my wife and my daughter as much as I was capable of. But my capacity for love was so limited. And we just couldn't see past it. My wife shares her experience with that, and it is that's the guilt that she brought into AA, was a parenting guilt. But I thought we'd spend a lot of time not drinking, but man, that hadn't been the case at all. AA'd be a tough place to do time. And I know people who do time in AA, and I feel for them. I'm not free of that due to virtue or intelligence. I promise you, thank God, neither of those are requirements for a good recovery. But my life has opened up in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've been free to do things I never expected to do. And when our book says great events will come to pass for you and countless others, believe me that many of those countless others are the people that I was living with already. My wife, my mother before she passed, our daughter. The countless others are everybody that I affected in my life and have been able to repair so many relationships. And the reason great events come to pass is because events that I was missing every day have turned into great events. Spending time with my daughter turned into a great event, not something that I need to get her out of my way. A coffee with a sponsee turns into a great event. Coming here to spend a weekend with you guys turns into a great event. I'm no longer enduring life. I'm not living a day at a time anymore in the very worst sense of the word. And the way we use it when we first get to AA is it's kind of pitiful, really. You know, come on, you can do anything a day at a time. Can you not drink today? Can you get through today? Can you hang on? And that's important because we want to keep it in today. Come on, hang in there today. Can you get from today's meeting to tomorrow's meeting? Hang on, buddy. But pretty soon, if I do that, and I get engaged in my recovery program and in those steps and working with others and being of service, doing everything that these people have talked about all weekend, pretty soon I'm not enduring the day, I'm embracing the day. Pretty soon I'm not getting through a day, I'm living one day at a time. And this day becomes the day where the great events are happening. Because before, I was always getting ready for a good day. You know, just wait. As soon as I get enough money, as soon as she starts treating me better, as soon as my kid does this, as soon as my job does this, I can't wait. Thursday, baby, we're going to have a good day on Thursday. But how about today? Today's the day. Right now. I got out of the treatment center and I went down in Nashville to a place called the Friendship House, 202, and it's been around 54 years now, and it's a kind of clubhouse in town. And I wandered in there and I wandered upstairs into a little meeting. There'd be 3 meetings going on at any given time. And I wandered in just through happenstance or God's grace into a small little room where some people were in a big book study. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a big book study. I didn't know the difference in meetings. I'd just gone where the bus had taken us, in treatment. And I fell in with some people that just changed my life. And downstairs they called them big book thumpers, and it wasn't a term of endearment. But that's not what was happening. They were not, because I've been a big book thumper. It's unattractive. I've wielded that big book as protection against how I really felt. I've used information, but I had no experience or personal application of the information. These people were looking in the book to say, okay, we're hearing this. How do we go do what this says? How are you doing it, man? What did you do? How can I take this and make this, when we say the big book comes alive? That's what we mean. How can I take this printed word and turn it into action? How can I put the information into application to bring about the transformation? Because that's what happens here. I can't read myself into quality sobriety. But I have turned what should be a spiritual exercise into an academic exercise more than once. And I've tried to guard against that. I got active and fell in love with AA right away. At 6 months sober, though, I was going to meetings and going home. I'm going to meetings and going home. And I was sitting in a meeting at 6 months sober, and I heard something I'd not heard before. I heard people talking before the meeting. I'd gotten there early for a change. And it became apparent to me that some of these people were talking to each other between meetings. They were actually building relationships. I had no idea. It sounds funny. I had no idea. I thought AA is something you can't. It's like I went to class and went home. And I'm coming and going. And somebody said after the meeting, I'm sure they'd said it before, it was a Saturday meeting at lunchtime, 11:30 to 12:30. At the end of the meeting, somebody said, we're all going to lunch. Who'd like to go? Man, I desperately wanted to go. Desperately. So I got in my car. They were headed over to Shoney's. I got in my car, and I started over there, and about halfway there, I turned off and went home. The next week, I did the same thing. Started over there, went home. Third week, same thing. I desperately wanted to go, but here was my fear. My fear was I would walk in there, and there would be 6 people sitting at a table for 6. And I wouldn't know whether I'm supposed to pull a 7th chair up. I didn't know if they really meant me. I wasn't willing to have what I perceived as an awkward moment. And I was too self-conscious, which I discover now is the root of my problem. This hyper self-consciousness, this hypersensitivity. When our book says we alcoholics are sensitive people, I was sober several years before I realized that's not a compliment. I know because the next line says it calls it a crippling handicap. And I was crippled by this hypersensitivity, this unwillingness to wonder. I said, all I needed was a couple of guys to come over to me after the meeting and go, Steve, we've been talking, man. We really want you to go to lunch with us. And we're just arguing over who gets to sit with you. I would have gone. I would have gone and I would have been the head of the table because you will have removed those barriers of self-consciousness. So now I know after I get to AA, after I've been sober for a little while, I discovered my real problem, the unmanageability of my life. I have now, my relationship with alcohol has been severed. I'm not drinking. And I think that's what our book says is the single symptom that ties us all together. The doctor's opinion says that sets us apart as a distinct entity. So that's what's distinctive about the alcoholic is this allergy to alcohol. But this unmanageability is in 200 and something other 12-step programs. So it is common to the alcoholic, but it's not exclusive to the alcoholic. We heard about it in the Al-Anon meeting today. The unmanageability is what I think on page 52 in our book is where I find me, an inability to control my emotional nature, prey to misery and depression, can't be of real use to other people, bouts of fear, feelings of uselessness, inability to make a living, which doesn't for me mean earn a paycheck, but I got no sense of satisfaction out of anything I did. And AA seems to treat that unmanageability that makes drinking unnecessary for me. That bondage of self is my problem. that constant need unknowingly to be self-satisfied. I don't understand. In the third step prayer when we say, relieve me of the bondage of self, for a long time I thought that self was being held hostage, when in fact self is the hostage taker. Self in Alcoholics Anonymous is pride and ego. And I'm trying just to, pride and ego come dressed as our friends. They're like the government. They say, we're here to help. And they're about as effective. And because pride and ego says, you can't tell the truth here. You can't let them see you like that. Oh, you can't embarrass yourself. They look like they're here to protect me, but in fact, they're the very thing that are blocking me off from you and blocking me off from God. They are my problem. It is the problem from which all other problems come, right? What Chuck C says, my singular problem is a conscious separation from God and man. I am conscious of my separation. I'm the guy that's sitting in a room like this with all you people and somehow thinks, but I am singularly different. Again, I wouldn't have described it that way, but I'm the one, I'm the brown tuxedo, And I don't understand that's my problem. And once I know it's my problem, it becomes less of a problem. In fact, I've discovered in AA that my problem has never been what I thought it was. My problem's not my problem. My problem is that my problem is a problem. Yeah, I'll wait on you. My problem is that I label something a problem. I decide something's unacceptable. I decide this isn't okay. And when I decide something isn't okay, then I can't be okay. Our book says that this is not a life, that living a life of unmet demands will leave me in a state of continual disturbance. The 12 and 12 in the seventh step says this isn't about having my demands met, it's about lessening my demands. It's about me finding a way to be okay as I am and as you are. It's the very thing that Dr. Paul's talking about in acceptance. It's the very thing that Bill is talking about there in the 12 and 12. How do I do that? Surrender to the ego, surrender looks like giving up. Looking through the egocentric mind, surrender is giving up. Through the spiritual centric mind, surrender is ready to receive. When I will let go of all my old ideas, even the ones that are factually accurate, but am I willing to set everything down, submit myself to this process and see what happens? What happens is my view of life changes. Now I was stuck I'm going to finish in 12 minutes exactly. Well, more than 12, no less than 12, no more than 13. And so I struggled with this guy. I got to AA, and once I had the problem, the next line in the book said, if so, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience can conquer. I thought, damn, I got a problem I can't solve. You got a solution I don't want. Our book calls it a dilemma. A dilemma is a problem with two equally unacceptable solutions. You want to die an alcoholic death or live life on a spiritual basis? You want to accept spiritual help or go on to the bitter end? I'm free to do either. But there doesn't seem to be a third option in AA. Because I don't want to die an alcoholic death and I don't want to live on a spiritual basis. So what else you got on the menu? We got nothing else on the menu. We're like a steak restaurant. We serve steak. Well, how's the fish here? We don't have fish. We got steak. Well, I'd like some fish. Well, there's a great fish restaurant down the street, but we don't serve fish. We got steak. And what AA serves is a power greater than myself, which will solve my problem. That's the only thing AA offers me. Doesn't say it's the only thing there is. I don't get into that debate with anybody, but I know it's what AA says. The second step describes the solution to my problem, that a power greater than myself will solve my problem, will restore me to sanity. And I don't think I'm capable of it. I don't think it's available to me. I don't think I'm willing to do what it takes to have one of those. I wouldn't get up, even though I'm loving AA, I would get up and I wouldn't hold hands and say the Lord's Prayer at the end of the meeting. Guy comes to me and says, Steve, what's the deal, man? Why won't you do, I said, and I couldn't have been more earnest. I said, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I said, I don't know what I believe. I'm not going to just hold hands and sing Kumbaya with the rest of the campers because that's what y'all are doing. And this guy had heard my treatment fifth step, kind of a confessional, and I talked about infidelities in my marriage, and I talked about those car wrecks, and I talked about stealing time and money from a family business, and I talked about being drunk at the hospital when my daughter was born, and he said, but hypocrisy, that's where you draw the line, huh? He said, that's impressive, man. He said, I got good news for you and bad news for you. I said, I'll play. I felt a little condescended to. If you're new here and you felt condescended to, it's because you've just been condescended to. And I said, what's the good news? I mean, what's the bad news? He said, the bad news is hypocrisy is way down your list of problems. And you might ought to address them in the order in which they will kill your ass. I said, what's the good news? He said, the good news is there's room for another hypocrite in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm more happy to hear that tonight than ever. But I still struggled. I didn't quite know how to find this conception of a higher power. I wouldn't use the word God. I didn't like the idea of prayer. It made me uncomfortable. All these spiritual terms. Now, our book makes very clear that I should set aside any prejudice I have and decide what they mean to me. I got great freedom. I get to pick a word and define it. I don't have to be right. I get the room to be wrong. But it says, but I didn't see that. I just saw God. I went through my book, and everywhere in my book that it said spiritual awakening or spiritual experience, I blacked it out with a magic marker. It looked like I had a CIA redacted model of the big book. And I wrote above it what Stacy mentioned last night. I wrote above it personality change. Because I was willing to have a personality change before I was willing to have a spiritual experience. And my sponsor said, Steve, you're hung up on language. I don't care what you call it. I want you to have it. And a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. And so that just allowed me to go forward. Over time, what I was able to do was adopt a point of view that continues to work for me today. And that point of view falls out of we agnostics. Number one, today I take the perspective, it's simply mine, that I don't view God as doing anything to me or for me. I don't view as me having to earn God's love. I'm trying to tap into a power and let the power do what the power does. When I go out in the sunshine, the sun doesn't decide who to shine on. The sun is there and it shines on anybody who makes their way into the sun. If I jump out here into the river doesn't decide who to take with the current. It takes anybody who finds their way into the current. So I don't have to earn anything. I have to access this power. And what I'm doing in these steps are facing and being rid of those things that block me off from the sunlight of the Spirit. I am literally letting my light shine. So the big book in We Agnostics says that no one can fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. So I quit trying to define it. I would hear you say God, and I wouldn't use the word God because I didn't want you to think I meant what you meant when you said God. And I don't even know what you meant. I would tell people what I didn't believe about God. I spent a lot of time telling people what I didn't believe about God. And God said, Steve, good news. We don't care what you don't believe. Because you're free to believe anything you want to believe. But just decide what you believe and act like a guy would act if he believed it. But I didn't believe anything. So it says that deep within every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. So I've just adopted the idea that that's where God is, that the fundamental idea of God is deep within. I've decided that that's true with me. I've decided it's true with you, and that has become my connection point. Where I was disconnected from the world, that is now what connects me to each and every one of you. And it says in the final analysis, it is only there that he may be found. But then I'm given a warning. It says, but look out, it says this may be obstructed or obscured by pomp, by worship of other things, and by calamity. Pomp is a reemergence of pride and ego. Worship of other things is anything I raise above that relationship. And it happens all the time. Whenever I have made a business deal the most important thing in a day, I'm now flying solo. That has become my highest power. When I make a relationship the most important thing, in that moment, that is my highest power, and I'm disconnected. So this connection I've got is like a bad lamp you've got at home, that just kind of blinks on and off some. I'm connected, then I'm disconnected, then I'm connected. And the truth is I'm always connected, but I'm not aware of the connection. I'm not aware of the presence of God who is always present. The power is ever present, but I block myself off from it through pride and ego, fear, those things. And it says calamity. Well, a calamity is anything that can't be happening to me. I hardly ever suffer over your calamity. I'm empathetic. But my calamity, if I've decided something can't happen and it's happening, then that's really tough on me. And it might be disease, it might be death of a loved one, it might be financial ruin. I went bankrupt. Connie and I went bankrupt at 10 years sober. Lost our home, lost our cars. They came by, they loaded our cars up on a flatbed truck, and they were driving them off. And I called my sponsor, Frank. I said, Frank, man, they took our cars. He went, nah, Steve, they took their cars, To be fair. So anyway, then he goes on to say that as I draw near to him, he'll disclose himself to me. Since God is deep within every man, woman, and child, I believe that the way I draw near to him is to draw near to you. So when you guys invite me here this weekend, when you share yourselves with me and allow me the privilege of sharing myself with you a little bit, this power shows up in a way that I can't define or comprehend. And it offers me a life that relieves me of the obsession to drink, but at least as important, a life that is happily and usefully whole. There was a man in Nashville, Tennessee named Mo Holleran, and Mo was you got him here. Mo was one of our guys, right? I mean, he was one of the guys around town, and Mo's that guy that when I'm sitting in a meeting and he walked in, you just feel better. I knew everything was going to be okay when Mo was around. And Mo always, when he spoke, he always recited the verse to a poem at the end of his talk. During his talk, he recited a limerick that wasn't nearly as spiritual, but he would always recite a little verse to this poem. And when I first heard it over 20 years ago, I knew that verse summed up my relationship with a higher power here in Alcoholics Anonymous and my experience with Alcoholics Anonymous. When Mo came down with cancer in 2003, my friend Jerry and I went to breakfast with him in October, and he would pass away in December. And we knew that his time was short. And as we had breakfast, I asked Mo, I said, Mo, would you mind if when I get a chance to share my story that I use the verse to that poem when I close, because it will help me remember and honor you, but in the truest sense of Alcoholics Anonymous, it will pass on what you have passed on to me and so many others. And he was a little embarrassed. He said, oh, Steve, he said, if you think it'll help another drunk. Because that's what Mo was about. Mo was as good a member of Alcoholics Anonymous as I ever met, and he loved alcoholics as much as anybody I've ever met. Now, we can get here and love AA, but begin to not like alcoholics very much. And Mo loved alcoholics, wet or dry. And Mo was a guy, when that perennial slipper came back in, and I'm looking busy and looking down and don't want to make eye contact or going to get coffee. I look up and Mo's running over to the guy and giving him a hug and saying, we're glad you're back, we love you, and giving him a kiss. He was a kisser. And I said, man, that's the guy I want to be. That's the AA member I'd like to be. And so when he said that, Steve, if you think it'll help another drunk, I know from that day till this, I've had the chance to share it with literally tens of thousands of people since 2003. And I know it's helped someone every time because I'm the one that it helps. And he said, I sought my God I could not see. I sought my soul eluded me. But I sought my fellow man and found all three. See, that's what happens here. I quit chasing God and started seeing if I could help you. And God shows up. I access the power. The power doesn't make me earn anything. The power activates. The power's there. The power changes the way I see this world. It changes the way I experience this world. And it makes a hostile place a friendly place. It makes an uncomfortable, insecure, lonely person feel at home, feel connected, and feel complete. I think Georgia talked about that, complete me. What our book says is that we will live happily and usefully whole. We show up here with the hole in the soul. We end up with H-O-L-E and change to W-H-O-L-E. Thank you so much for being here.